Greetings, my brothers and sisters. There's a political storm brewing in our community today. And here with your political weather report is the urban politician.
Warriors, I would like to begin this show with a poem by George Edward Tate. It's titled, I Am a Black Man. I am a black man, an African man. My history is that of humanity. My roots predate the calendar. Africa is my home. My contributions are all that is, has been, will be thought, such as civilized ideals. All that is, has been, will be said, such as cultivated words. All that is, has been, will be done, such as creative actions. I am a black man, an African man, my father's son. My thoughts include his thoughts. My blood and bone and flesh include his. My work includes his spirit. I follow in his footsteps. I continue them. I make my own. I am a black man, an African man. Speak not to me of compromise. I am a straight line, such as will. I am upward spiral, such as growth. I am a circle, such as fulfillment. My goal is perfection. My path is productivity. My vehicle is power. I am a black man, an African man, reascending my throne. I tolerate no obstacles. Hindrances do not deter me. I feed on impediments. I shall purge my kingdom. All poachers beware. It's game warden time. I am a black man, an African man. Do not attack me with media cries of chauvinism. Exploitation is a foreign product imported by Negroes. Do not try to change me. I reject effeminate. Do not ask me to cry. Tears are for the trembling and watering eyes, enigma to the warrior. The enemy must remain in focus until the enemy no longer remains. Do not attempt to domesticate me. I cannot protect you with dishpan hands. I am a black man, an African man. In time of war, present me with harmony, but speak not to me of peace until victory is ours. Present me with unconditional love, that I might present us with unconditional liberation. I am a black man, an African man. Acknowledge my strength. Offer me no prizes for weakness. Do not encourage the superficial. Tempt me not with diversion. If you are my friend, fight by my side or heal my wounds. If you are my enemy, confess. I am a black man, an African man, detained but not destroyed, enslaved but not extinct, conquered and oppressed but not for long. I am a black man, an African man, fighting for the future, heading for home, manhood. Be my momentum, nationhood. Be my challenge, familyhood. Be my reward. A BB for Holiday Warriors. We have a great show in store for you today. It's going to be a little longer than the typical 30 minutes. We're going to be featuring and interviewing Brother out of Milwaukee, Taki Raton. Before we get there, we're going to go to a commercial break and give you a song, and then we'll start the show. Tired of the same old air fresheners? Sankofa Oils and Products, your aroma burning oil for your home, business, and car. Packaged neatly in a 1-ounce spray bottle. We have an assortment of different fragrances for your delight. For more information, you can email me at info@sankofaoils.com, or you can actually order directly from the Facebook page, facebook.com/Sankofa Oils. Don't forget to like it. And by the way, you can also call me at 770-676-1459. We ship all around the country.
Dreams of a warrior. Eternal. Struggle with good and evil, conflict. Eternally. As I gaze out across the field of the barren lands, I assemble my soldiers for the final stand. Sharp steel and shields protect my body, ready to unleash violence for my mortal enemy. Blood will run tonight. Even if it's my own, it's my plight. Locked in battle, this chess game, I summon my knights to deal death tonight. So we'll eat our last supper, kiss our families goodnight. Struggle, heavily struggle. Death's on our mind. As we prepare to walk across this field, might be the last time we ever look at each other, but we ride as brothers, protect each other. Standing tall with our army, feeling no pain yet, knowing the blood's gonna run deep in the fields. So we prepare, we launch the attack, and we'll never look back, knowing not all of us gonna make it. But we will fight with everything in our heart, because we believe in what we believe in. So let's prepare to die. Because that's one thing we're going to do for sure. Contemplate that. So I'll close my eyes and say our last prayer together as one big unit. Because once we move forward, it's done. So my final words to you will be, for will it ever will be over in the darkest of night, only to rise to see the sun's early light. Eternal war, eternal strife. Let's mount up, get this victory.
Great cut, performed by Derek Martin, alias C. Smooth, produced by Daniel Givens. We're back and welcome to the Urban Politician Show. Today is a very important show that we want to highlight, and I say it all the time. We need to have an African-centered worldview. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to have an African-centered education? Well, we're honored today to highlight a brother that has excelled in this field. I'm going to read you a short bio. Taki Raton is an adjunct professor at Springfield College, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on the undergraduate and graduate levels. Courses taught include African American history, education, oppression and resistance, and Master's Research Project 4. He is former founder and principal of Blyden Delany Academy in Milwaukee, operating under the African-centered instructional and student-centered developmental model. This all-black private school served area children from 1998 to 2008 in K4 through 8 grade learning levels. A writer and lecturer on the national stage detailing African world historiography, urban community concerns with emphasis on education, the social development of black youth, and African American male issues. Raton is additionally host of the weekly Thursday evening radio show, Men Think, on the Harambee Radio and TV Internet Broadcast Network. I must add, that's also black-owned. His work and authorship in the education of African American youth has been referenced in A House Divided No More, Time for Indigenous Communal Healing, James, 2011. Why Aren't African-Centered Charters Running Turnarounds? Harab, The Notebook, February 2011. The Afrocentric Education Debate, Alive in Milwaukee. Asmarum, The Atlanta Post, November 22, 2010. Brother to Brother, A Message of Hope, James, 2008. American Journal of Education, Merry and New, 2008. And Why Our Children Hate Us, How Black Adults Have Betrayed Black Children, Grimes and Slaughter, 2006. He is a contributing writer in the Milwaukee Community Journal and Milwaukee Courier newspapers. His series, Young, Gifted, and Black appears bi-monthly in the Courier, highlighting exemplar achievements of African American youth, elementary through college. 26 articles will have been published under this banner, making its first-year continuous series run as of February 22, 2013. Raton, for the past 27 years, has been an instructor of African American studies on the high school, college, and adult education levels, with over 35 teacher in-service staff development schedules to his credit from 1986 through the present. He further organized and moderated 2 panel presentations on Tom Burrell's book, Brainwashed, in Milwaukee at University of Wisconsin-Madison on May 7, 2010, and at Chicago's Black Star Project on July 31, 2010. Raton has and currently assists in the consultantship capacity in private schools in obtaining their pre-accreditation and accreditation standard requirements. Under the co-sponsorship of 100 Black Men Chicago and Milwaukee chapters, Mr. Raton has, over the past 4 years, from 2009 to 2012, respectively coordinated the bus coach trip of a total 65 top African-American seniors from Milwaukee, Kenosha, Beloit, and Madison for the annual honors students reception in Chicago, joining over 200 other Chicago area seniors. These select Southeast Wisconsin achievers are invited to interact with national college and university representatives to explore admissions and scholarship opportunities. Invitational student criteria includes 3.3 GPA and 23 COM or above on the Act. A native of Chicago, Illinois, Mr. Raton received his BA in art from the College of Artesia in Artesia, New Mexico, and his MA in Inner City Studies Education from the Jacob H. Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies, Northeastern Illinois University. And I must add, you also graduated from Hyde Park, my brother. Is that correct, in Chicago?
Yes, sir. Probably so. And Hyde Park, particularly in my peer group, we are still a very close-knit peer group, and we are still together socially. So we are in contact with. I don't know if you're familiar with Chicago, but all the high schools on the South Side, a lot of the graduates who are now professional and perhaps looking at retirement, we're still in contact socially.
Great. I lived in Chicago for several years, and I'm very familiar with Hyde Park. So when I saw that, I said, "Wow, my Chicago listeners would really like to know that." Some of the discussion points, brother, that I would like to go over with you, and I think that you're the perfect person to discuss this, is, and I'll list them out and then we can kind of go into them, is what is an African-centered worldview? And what is... Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And what is the difference between an African-centered worldview and a European worldview? And we can start with those.
Well, I think in terms of relative to my work, how I might want to answer that is to discuss what an African-centered curriculum is and what we do with that relative to our children. The African-centered curriculum is both a teaching and student developmental model, placing the African world experience from humankind's origin to the present at the center of the instructional experience. Our students, therefore, become the subject of the teaching and learning process rather than the object of human activity. And just in that statement, I explained to you what the African worldview is. It's a view of the world from the eyes, from the lens, from the mind, from the heart, from the soul, and from the spirit of the African. Not the heart, mind, soul, and spirit of the black man in America, or the Negro, or that time frame from 1619 to 1865, 246 years, or that time frame from 1865 to 2013, 147 years. The African worldview is a view of the world from an African perspective, from Africa looking out into the world. The European worldview is the same as it would be with the Jewish worldview, the Polish worldview, the Irish worldview. It's a worldview of how other people view their world from their own cultural and historical perspective. So there's nothing atypical and or unusual about the African worldview relative to our responsibility and our duty and our naturalness of seeing our world from our own perspective. I might also add that the African-centered curriculum is also a corrective model whose thrust is to challenge and correct distortions and falsifications of Africa, Africans, and African ascendants that have historically been present in Eurocentric historical literary and cultural reference frame arenas. And lastly on that point, and then I'm through with that, there was a very strong effort back in terms of justifying the enslavement process. Johann Blumenbach back in 1795 was the one who actually invented the concept of white supremacy and black inferiority. And he was the first to publicize the term Caucasian, which he used for the first time in the third edition with great work. The Generis Humani Nativa in 1795. My whole point for bringing that up, and there's a whole handout on that, is that was the foundation for the falsehoods that began to emerge from 1795, from the 16th century onward into present day. And so the African-centered curriculum, the African worldview, is a corrective of those falsehoods under which both white and black, and indeed the world, follow.
Well, that brings up another question. Interesting enough, you learned under Jacob Carruthers amongst many, and in his book Intellectual Warfare, he details not so much with what whites thought, but how the struggle amongst black multicultural agenda versus a African-centered curriculum, and how that intellectual war, if you will, have been going on for actually since the end of slavery, since the late 1800s. What's important for our listeners to know the difference between the two, and why, and how much more effective, at least in my view, that an African-centered worldview can be? Because it seems to me that we have been trying this multicultural agenda for quite some time, yet and still we're not really seeing a significant difference in the plight of our community as a whole. There are some that continue on with good educations in our universities and good jobs and move on, but for the majority of us, we're still wallowing in the same place that we had before. It's just my opinion that an African-centered worldview is quite a different solution and a much better solution to our rising. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, sir. Just to put your question in perspective, fortunately, right now in 2013, many of us no longer participate in those discussions. It's really a waste of time. And I do recall back in the day, back in the 90s, and part of the early millennium, but back in the 90s, I plus a lot of other African centrists were involved and invited to sit in on multicultural panels and multicultural discussions. And it's interesting about those panels. I'll just give a description of how those panels were, and then I'm going to quote Asante in support of Dr. Carruthers' remarks. Almost to my memory, all of those multicultural panels and discussions were led by white people. And a white person would be sitting at a table, at the front of the table, and then there'll be myself and somebody who's Hispanic, somebody who might be Native American Indian, and somebody who might be Arab or East Indian, and other folk all sitting around the table discussing our cultures. Over a period of time, we begin to find that as you move from panel to panel, from workshop to workshop, and from conference to conference, we begin to find that insulting. Because we had, once you participate in the work at the table, in a table conference, it's okay. But when we get amongst ourselves, when I'm looking face to face with Native American Indian, or face to face to someone who might be Polish or Mexican or whatever, we have a whole different conversation, and we are very much in respect of each other's cultures. We're not trying to get into each other's business or cultural business. We might share a few of those things in terms of what they're about and what we're about, what they believe, what we believe in, and that's it. But for some reason, if you look at the works of Dr. Asante, Lefty Asante, he would say that multiculturalism, the way it was practiced, is that they were really advocating the imposition of a white perspective on everyone else's culture. And that's basically what they were doing. And you really have to watch. You really have to watch and listen to the language that was used at those so-called multicultural conversations. And what it came down to is the European world, or the European worldview, trying to find their place, define their place, or maintain their place in a growing multicultural, if I may say, multicultural setting, where other groups and other cultures were coming into the pluralistic arena. So the European world was still trying to maintain its place, its authority, and its image within that multicultural arena, because other folks, also definitely to include the African American in the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, were coming into the fold along with Native American Indians, along with Mexicans and other groups, Hispanics, so on and so forth, into the pluralistic arena. So it was a discussion of where do I fit, i.e. European, and where do we all fit. We no longer do that. If someone were to ask me right now in 2013, would I come in and participate in a multicultural discussion, I would not do that. I would find it demeaning, and I would not put myself or my culture or black people in that conversation.
Which leaves the question for our listeners, those listeners particularly that have school-age children that are really trying to understand. I mean, a lot of us can't afford public schools, but those going to, private schools, but those going to public schools, and then there are alternative African-centered institutions, such as one here in Atlanta, the Academic Institute, by Brother Mwalimu Baruti.
Sure.
What do we say to those parents what advantages and benefits can you spell out in a nutshell are the advantages of their children going to an African-centered institution?
Well, first they're centered. The African child is centered into his or her own self and his or own spirit and his or own center. Let me get back to just to close up the point about the multiculturalism, just so as we can bring our listeners with a well-rounded understanding. Old school. Those of us who were raised in old school, particularly Chicago old school or any old school around the country, and what I'm speaking to is not any different than what Jews do or Japanese do or Asians do, East Indians, Mexicans, Hispanics, or anyone else who come into a place like America. The first thing that you do is what is called dual cultural instruction, and all this is done at home. All this is done at home and in the community institutions. The child is first taught about himself or herself. The child first masters his or her own culture. The child first is taught to love and embrace his or her own culture. Again, this is what African schools do, and African schools do so well. And once the child is anchored in his or her own culture, that child is also at the same time introduced to the ways and the value of the larger culture into which they will be working and are moving into in their adult lives. And so what is called dual mastery is that the child is taught first to master and to love his or her own culture, and then to master the ways of the larger society into which they will be growing into. So they're taught humane interaction, civil cooperation, proper work ethics. They're taught pluralistic competition, and all of that is taught at home, so that when that child goes out into the world, they know how to effectively interact successfully with and amongst other people, all other people. Those of us who were trained in old school learned that very well and learned that at a very early age. So I want our listeners to understand that when you are taught in an all-black environment, when you're taught in an all-Jewish environment, when you're taught in an all-Hispanic environment or East Indian environment or any environment that is not white, that still is not saying that you cannot learn the ways of other people. All these groups that I mentioned prepare their cultural membership and prepare their children to function extremely well, to function extremely competently and competitively in mainstream environment. Now to your question, at Blyden Delany, I found a pattern that, if I may just simply say it like this, what all other African schools do in one way or another. The child first comes into a building, comes into an environment that reflects the most highest order best of who they are, who they were, and the promise of that which they will become. The whole environment of the school is structured in terms of image, in terms of its philosophical environment. All of that is structured whereby the child comes to a sense that reinforces all that they have been and all that they will become. The African environment also is stronger than the environment and stronger than the culture that the child brings into the building. So the child comes into a building with the hip-hop and all the popular culture. The African school environment, the culture of the African school environment has to be stronger than that. So we bring the child into an environment that reflects his history, and then from the historical placement of that, the child is introduced to the best and highest order of his culture. The best of what his culture was, the best of what his culture is, the best of what his culture can become in the future. Once you put that child into the highest order of African and African world culture, guess what you get? You're going to get the type of character that you want from that child. And when I say the type of character you want, I'm talking about the type of behavior you want. And so once you get that behavior that you want, and you begin to bring out the unique talents, skills, gifts, and genius of that child, once that child begins to have a heightened self-esteem, a heightened self-identity, heightened self-ideal, and a heightened cultural identity, he and or she begins to see that they can do better. They begin to look at their potential, and that's when you begin to get the academic excellence that you are looking for.
Not the
one of the things that go ahead.
One of the things that, at least in my research, that I found that that I think is quite critical is the deep thinking process that occurs in African-centered schools, opposite to memorization for testing and things of that nature. It's really pulling back that layer, pulling back the onion and seeing what's behind all of that versus I have a test, I'm going to study to the test, I'm going to memorize what I need to memorize in order to pass this test and then move on. There's a difference, there's an emphasis put in African-centered schools that require or push students to apply deep thinking. Would you find that to be another advantage or benefit of an African-centered school?
Yes, but critical thinking is just one advantage and one of the traits and outcomes that we're looking at. We're looking at the development of the entire student, and I think that when a child is in the building, when a child's in the classroom, it's not just one element that is happening with that child. That child's being modeled by a highly select and very well-trained teacher. That child's being modeled by a curriculum that is designed to bring out the best of all of his and all of her skills, all of their talents, and all their genius. But I think most importantly, that child is inspired to learn. That child is inspired to do well. That child is inspired to excel. Because one of the things that we give that child is that the African student is surrounded by models of achievement and models of excellence that look like him, that go all the way back from humankind beginnings up to and through the present. And so all around this child, he and or she sees models of excellence, models of accomplishment, models of achievement, and models of genius. And that is taught to the child and shown to the child and modeled to the child every second, every minute, every hour, and every day that child is a student at that particular school. So it's all these things put together that generate this feeling into this child that I want to succeed, I will succeed, I must succeed.
Brother Taki, this is a show that probably needed to be an hour. You have so much knowledge and information to give. I mean, I thought that I knew some things in my research of an African-centered education, but you've made me go back and do a little bit more research and have a much greater understanding, because the masses of us aren't even aware of this, and when we do become aware of it, we don't understand what it is. And although there's several institutions across this country, it's not in the media. There's really no way of knowing unless people like yourself and shows like this and other shows are really highlighting and getting it out to the people. Outside of Facebook, and Brother does have a Facebook page, listeners. You should go on his page and befriend him. But if people wanted to have either parents or other institutions that are thinking about either changing their curriculum to an African-centered curriculum or developing one themselves, how would one contact you for your consultation?
Well, this is what we do, and part of my consultanship is, in fact, to help. And in fact, I'll be working with parents here in Milwaukee on that particular charge. I have of course, email address, and if there are people who wanted to get in touch with me personally, they could get in touch with you, and then you can put them in touch with me, and I can give them my phone number. But I can be reached at Blyden Delany, that is one word, at B as in boy, L as in love, Y as in you, D as in done, E, @yahoo.com. And I have done this repeatedly over the years. I took, in fact, indeed, the first African school here in Milwaukee, Siloa Lutheran School, was a school that I in-serviced their teachers over an 8-week period back in 1989-90 during that summer. And that school opened in the fall of, I believe it was around 1990, with a full apostolic curriculum intact. And the parents immediately saw the change in the behavior of their children within 2 months, from that September to October. They saw the change in behavior of their children. Their children came home. They wanted to learn. They did their homework. They were excited about going to school. There were no suspensions or expulsions during that academic year. The test scores, the standardized test scores of that school just shot up as they moved into the November and spring testing seasons. And that is published in my work. That's also published in the Siloa Lutheran archives. And so you see the same thing with Imhotep Charter School in Philadelphia, J.S. Chick and S.B. Ladd schools in Kansas City, Marcus Garvey schools in Los Angeles. I mentioned Siloa Lutheran School. You'll see the same thing at Arabi Institute of Science and Technology in Philadelphia, and you'll see the same in Joseph Blue School in West Palm Beach, Florida, and the Garvey School in Trenton, New Jersey. So we do this successfully around the country. And I might add in my closing remarks that studies have shown over and over again that when African-American students, when black students are introduced to their history and their culture, when there is racial instruction at home based upon who and what they are, the self-esteem rises, the self-confidence rises, and when they get into school, the academic their academic work rises, and also their behavior is excellent. So we have these models around the country who've been doing this, as I said, we're going on now 40 years successfully.
Great information. To conclude, Brother Taki.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to really have you back to discuss Edward Wilmot Blyden and Martin Delany. Sure. Two African-centered scholars that we don't read in our history books, and our people need to know who they are. And just in brief, I got my master's from the Central University Studies, and I studied under Dr. J. Carruthers, of course, and he founded the Kemetic Institute. That's part of ASCAC, the Associated Study of Classical African Civilizations. And at the Center for Inter-City Studies, there was a Blyden Delany school that had existed for a while. And, of course, studying under J. Carruthers, he would always talk about Edward Wilmot Blyden and Martin R. Delany. And so I was kind of trained in those two people, and that's where that inspiration came from. And one last thing, and I almost forgot this. Talking to you on the phone the other day, you sat at the foot of some really great brothers and sisters, and I'd like you just to name off some of those brothers and sisters, if you will, that you studied under as you came up.
Well again, it's not just myself. I think the generation of protégés who were trained in the African-centered model, my generation would be that first line of people that came out, and I would just say under ASCAC, the Association for Study of Classical African Civilization, that started in 1984. So again, your master teachers were brought together to frame that particular discussion. Dr. J. Carruthers, Dr. Asa Hilliard, John Henry Clark, Ben Yakanad, John G. Jackson, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and a host of others, came together from Chicago, from around the country to form ASCAC. Those of us, myself included, came under their tutelage relative to the Afrocentric model that was then forming, that was then being framed. And so we studied under them. And so I guess in our work, in our life, we carry their teachings and we carry their work forward, which is, of course, my inspiration and my modeling of starting Blyden Delany Academy, which ran from 1998 to 2008, because we were told that the first thing that we need to be doing is to start institutions, and particularly start schools for our children. You'll see that repeated again in Dr. Umar Johnson's presentation, who was here in Milwaukee just last week, and Booker T. Coleman, and a lot of folk who come out of Hidden Colors 1 and 2, and Pan-Africanists and Nationalists right now. And, of course, Baruti, as you will have on your show pretty soon, will always say, we have to have institutions for our children. We have to build Afro-centered schools for our children. That's completely independent and totally under our control.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, we do. Brother Taki, this is going to conclude for today, and I look forward to speaking to you in the near future, my brother.
I look forward to it also, and thank you very much for having me on your show.
Asante Sana.
Asante Sana. Okay.
There's a train that comes from Namibia and Malawi. There's a train that comes from Zambia and Zimbabwe. There's a train that comes from Angola and Mozambique, from Lesotho, from Botswana, from Swaziland, from all the hinterlands of southern and central Africa. This train carries young and old African men who are conscripted to come and work on contract in the gold and mineral mines of Johannesburg and its surrounding metropoli. 16 hours or more a day for almost no pay. Deep, deep, deep down in the belly of the earth, when they are digging and drilling for that shiny, mighty, evasive stone, or when they dish that mishmash food into their iron plates with the iron shovel, or when they sit in their stinky, funky, filthy, flea-ridden barracks and hostels, they think about the loved ones they may never see again because they might already have been forcibly removed from where they last left them, or wantonly murdered in the dead of night by roving and marauding gangs of no particular origin. We are told. They think about their lands and their herds that were taken away from them with the gun and the bomb and the tear gas and the Gatling and the cannon. And when they hear that choo-choo train, a chugging and a pumping and a smoking and a pushing and a pumping, crying and a steaming and a chicken and a wah. They always cuss and they curse the coal train that brought them to Johannesburg.
Brothers and sisters, warriors, thank you for tuning in to the Urban Politician Show. We sure hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back next Monday at 9 a.m. for our next show. Have a lovely day. Alafia.
Stimela sihamba ngamalahle siveleta la kupayi sangela tawa kuqa hey babe what is izuba malahle zuba malahle stimela babo sihamba ngamalahle siveleta la kupayi helele sangela tawa kuqa hey babe what is izuba malahle Paisa we no but Stimela she's a sitting dangezi just yelele mande let me go yeah mama but Stimela